Good afternoon to my colleagues, to the people of the territory, to the testifiers, to the honoree. First, I would like to say I'm very happy that, again, we are able to give people their flowers while they're living. I, too, grew up in the Savon area. For those of you might assume we only have 2 Savaneros. It's actually 3. I was born, raised, christened, everything in the church, literally on the same similar stretch, Church of God of Prophecy. And my dad, Frank's Barbershop, was always in Savon. So we lived there, worked there, worshiped in that area. So it's truly a blessing to know that we're definitely going to be taking this time out to honor Reverend Bishop Dr. William Industrious. I am very familiar with the church as it was in the same similar area. And I am happy to know that we are taking this time out. But the questions I would like to ask to the testifiers, could you share with me one word that you would attribute to Dr. Industrious when it came to who you think he exemplified as a person?
Pastor Rollins. He exemplifies his name, industrious, hardworking, dedicated individual with a deep conviction. And for the years that I have known him to be a man of deep, deep conviction. And that's what I appreciate. He doesn't like to start anything that he does not finish. He's that kind of a man of God. So I thank God when I see his steadfastness, how he stands, how he presents himself. I am blessed to be under his ministry.
His granddaughter, she can share her thoughts.
Yes. Dr. Andrea Dorsey, I echo similar sentiments of Pastor Rollins. The word choice for me would be resilient. Despite all the challenges that I have observed of my grandfather, he remains consistent with his belief. Even if it might not be the most popular opinion, he remains steadfast and his actions aligned with his belief and his strong conviction. As a result, he maintained a stable force for our family as well as the Christian community. Thank you.
If you want to say more.
Well, I just heard my time was called, so I want to say thank you for this opportunity to just ask the testifiers some questions, and I will definitely be voting in the affirmative for this piece of legislation, and I hope that Dr. Industrious, like my previous colleague said, we have an opportunity to do this for him post-haste. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator.
Good afternoon once again to my colleagues, to the testifiers, to the people of the territory. When I originally received this piece of legislation, I did take the time out to do some research, and I was a little bit concerned initially at the attempt to make a default of only $100. I was concerned at it being, $3.33 a day in this modern day and age. But when I realized that with the amendment in the nature of a substitute, is now after the proponent, the senator is now going to attempt to, instead of doing it at $100 default, add to what is already existing. I could better understand that. But my concern with that is I think that we as a body created a loophole. And unfortunately, that loophole threshold is a little bit too low, because if somebody that potentially might have to pay for a child $700-800 a month or $600 a month, what's the big deal from going from $250 to $350? It's still below $600 or $700. And for me, when you're going to do things to incentivize people, I am along the lines of what the testifier was speaking. The same way we incentivize people not to park up in parking spaces for the handicap for $1,000, why would we not shift our laws to say, listen, if you know you procreated, you created a child, you are responsible for that child, but you don't want to take responsibility, there are penalties in place. We have more penalties for parking spaces than we do for human beings and taking care of that. I am not really in agreement for this low threshold. If we're going to go in and change the law, let's go for the gusto so they can understand that this is not something you do. Because now if we change it to potentially $1,000, it will force them to come in with their paperwork and make the necessary adjustments for those that are below this $1,000 threshold. But if you have people that know, hey, what's the big deal? It's going to be cheaper for me anyway. Why would they come? I wouldn't come if I could get away with it. If that's the case for people that are being malicious and don't want to really take care of their kids. People spend a lot of time as parents going back and forth with each other. And I know many stories because people call my office. One young lady called to tell me about having 3 daughters with one individual, and no matter how much she comes to paternity, it's a whole drama with her. And it's years she has not been able to receive a dime. And we're here making accommodations for the non-custodial parent to have loopholes, but the parent that has to pay these bills and take care of these children are the ones that are taking on the brunt of this responsibility. So my question to you, and this is to the testifiers, how serious, and even my senators, how serious are we about just changing this to $1,000 to force them to come in? Because that is the whole purpose of this default. To either get you behind in court, to paternity court, to make sure you have the proper documentation, or you're going to be caught with $1,000 a month. It's your choice.
Good afternoon,
Senator. You can respond to my.
Good afternoon, Senator. Catherine Jensen DeLuga, 4D Director. Senator, I am in full support of what you're saying to raise it to $1,000. As someone indicated to me in a conversation before I came in here, you just brought up the same thing. It's $1,000 to pay in a handicap parking space. So I'm in full support of raising it to $1,000.
Because from my perspective, that kills 2 things. If you actually would, as a parent, would have to pay more than $1,000, okay. But the average person doesn't have to pay more than $1,000 in child support. But they will race their behind in to give you the documentation to pay less. That would actually be a benefit to the children in the territory. And when my colleague was speaking about Kids Count and knowing that these numbers, 33% of our children are living in poverty. And some of that is attributed because they are being raised by one parent, where the other parent is not contributing. So when one parent has to take on all the responsibility, even though it took 2 people to procreate and bring this child into this world, we have to stop leaving doors open for these types of loopholes to exist. And if we're actually going to bring legislation, go full force in shutting it down and making sure that these parents get the monies they need to take care of these children. I think I heard somebody say time, so I'm going to just continue listening and vote accordingly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, time was caught.
I would have been kind and give up to Kenny once. But my point of information had to do, my colleague before did ask for the information I wanted in regards to see what percentage of the non-custodial parents do not bring in their data versus those that do. That would cause this initial default. But the other question I want to ask has to do with what percentage of employers do you get that are fully willing to participate in the process of turning over information, or do you have a percentage that you receive a difficult time? Because if the individuals are not willing to bring them in, how do you tap into potentially their employers and how do you find out who their employers are while you're doing your research over this 2-year period before it potentially becomes permanent? Thank you.
Jensen DeLugo, 4D Director. Senator, I believe that it is codified in Title 16 that employers must provide the information upon request or subpoena from the Division of Paternity and Child Support. For those that don't comply, they are sent a non-compliance notice and may be escalated to Superior Court for non-compliance. I think you asked another question within your question. If you could repeat it for me.
Well, the other question had to do with asking in regards to them supplying the information prior to the 2-year period before it becomes permanent. But you did just say to me that based on the code, they have to do it, and if non-compliance, I wanted to know what percentage of those people you might have an issue with that would have to potentially now escalate to go to court. Because I'm trying to figure out what kind of issues we're having from the non-custodial parents to make sure our children get the monies they deserve.
Senator, I'll have to compile that information for you, but I will say that the focus of this particular legislation is those people that have income on the underground economy. Non-reported income, they're not paying taxes.
Thank you, Senator Alma Francis Heidegger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So my question to you, you said...
Thank you so much. While I listened to my colleagues share their thoughts as to us needing a little bit more rationale, I was very clear and concise when I made my decision. As it relates to why I am in full support of moving it to $1,000, for almost 20 years, the default has been at $250. 20 years later, we're quadrupling it 4 times. That's $1,000 for me. My other concern had to do with my previous colleague. I'm not sure if he understood what the vote was. We did not move it from $250 to $350. We moved it to $1,000 default. That is not for the fathers and mothers who are non-custodial that come in and bring in their paperwork, that pay their child support. That is not for them. This default is strictly for those that when they are subpoenaed, they won't come. When they're told to bring in their documentation, they won't come. So what we did is put $1,000 default that if you don't show up, this is your default amount. And it will force them to come in with their paperwork. For those underground areas that the office, the testifier spoke about, well, guess what? They're going to have to be forced to go file taxes now in order to bring their paperwork to show what they're supposed to pay. So this is going to trickle down across the board. The last thing I would like to put on the record is I did not appreciate the statement that was made by the chairman because, number one, as a member of this institution, we are allowed to come in on video. I have a health issue and I chose today to come on video. So it was not in your place to make the decision to make the remarks you made today when you are always on camera and nobody questions it. I did not appreciate that disrespectful behavior and I hope it does not persist in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And I will end by saying this. Mila, you can mute that microphone.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to my colleagues. Good afternoon to the people of the territory. Good afternoon to the testifiers. I was very happy when I heard Dr. George speak about mediocrity because that seems to be somewhat the order of the day for quite a few things here in the territory, unfortunately. One of my quotes I often share, we spend so much time rationalizing mediocrity, we've forgotten what greatness looks like. And unfortunately, in our society, I am very upset at times when things that should not be done are being done. And this is one of the situations where we could at least praise and thankfulness on someone that has contributed to our territory. One of the things for me that I see as a drawback is that, yes, we put a lot of emphasis on academia, which I fully support. And this is just not limited to the college area, but also dealing with our schools. But I think when it comes to the arts and comes to sports, we have to also add a lot of focus on that as well. And when I'm hearing that the university, unfortunately, is lacking from having this very vital sport as part of their curriculum, I am more than happy to assist with doing what we have to do to make sure it comes back, as well as making sure that sports is an adamant part of dealing with our children's education as well. For me, I want to ask a question in regards to Dr. Cooper. I heard about role model. I heard about very passionate about what she did with tennis, etc. But can you, Dr. Newton, give me one memory that you had that stood out the most about her that has left a lasting impact on you when it comes to Dr. Cooper?
Yes, Senator. Well, I've experienced her on-court performance. I played mixed doubles with her.
Okay.
I played against her, and I think what helped her to succeed is that, well,
One moment, Dr. Newton. Bring down your camera a little because your top part of your head is being cut off. All right. You look like you're in frame now. Try again.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, I played with her in mixed doubles. I played against her. And there is one thing that you're going to realize, that she is a no-nonsense person. She will not take it from her partner. She will not take it from her opponents. And that for me is her trademark. And in practice, if she's not comfortable, she'll walk off the court. She was a no-nonsense person, and that took her through.
Well, that is good to hear. I think I heard my time, but I'll just go ahead and wrap up. I want to say thank you to Dr. Hall. When I got a chance to read the testimony, I'm going to be honest. I initially was a little bit concerned because I wasn't sure how Dr. Hall what direction he would have gone in, because I know sometimes when it comes to naming of different things at the university, he had a different mindset. So I was very pleasantly surprised and happy that he's fully in support of this tennis court being named after Dr. Pernilla Cooper. So thank you for the time, Madam Chair. I will be voting in the affirmative.
Thank you so much, Senator Frances Heiliger. The timekeeper can place 3 minutes on the clock for me. I really want to first begin by commending the bill sponsor,